system. Okay. Chalo, we'll start with the tanker ki very basics. So if you see this tanker cargo work basically है क्या? It's a normal ship like any other ship except यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा जो operation है, location or things or equipment what we have is slightly different. So all of you, I don't know, most of you must have been working on tankers and few of you may not have worked on tankers. So थोड़ा सा उनको मुश्किल लगेगा कि हाँ जिन्होंने देखा नहीं है. So the guys who have seen, who have worked on tankers, उनके लिए तो easy है सब कुछ देखना, assume करना, visualize करना. So tanker is basically a specialized vessel, specialized ship, which is designed to carry your liquid cargoes. So this used to be the biggest ship, Jaire Viking. So you can imagine deadweight 564,000 metric tons. So 500,000 ton of crude oil she used to carry at a time. So tankers are very simple ships, but safety factor is very high because one simple mistake can cause a big disaster. So the guys who are working on tankers, they know right from the beginning that what tanker is and how, and we become more and more safety conscious because we are dealing with the oil. So tanker, a specialized ship intended for the carriage of bulk liquid cargo, and oil tanker further divided into basically two types. We have crude oil tanker and product oil tanker. So crude oil, all of you know what is crude oil. Is just a raw oil, mineral oil, which is found in the earth, and it is extracted and then a little bit stabilized and then transported from one place to another place. And of course all the countries, everybody needs oil. Finally it is refined and then various products are made and they are also again transported. That's also what we call a product carrier. Now for both of the above, the cargo of oil is carried within the tanks. जैसे आपके other ships में you have cargo holds, here we have the tanks similar to the holds of other ships. The difference being that the bulkheads are extra strengthened to take in the load and the hatch or the rather the tank openings are very small. अब आपने दूसरे ships पे देखा bulk carrier, container ships, the hatch opening is too large for loading the cargo. So here you have nothing, very small tank dome, only for in case you have to go for an inspection, repairs, that's all. The sole purpose of this tank dome is having them is for man entry for small repair work in dry docks. Otherwise it's totally an enclosed tank. Now the cargo of oil is loaded onto the ship's tanks by pipelines which are fixed. ये भी नहीं है portable, everything is fixed on the ship. Permanent structure, and the shore pipelines are connected to the ship's pipelines at the manifold or either side of the ship. So जब आपने the tanker, when she is come for terminal for loading, discharging, so in the midship area there is basically what we call the manifold and the shore pipelines are connected. Previously it used to be the flexible pipes, rubber flexible pipes, and of course long time back it has been, now we connect the steel arms, what we call the chicksons. The shore pipelines may be connected using flexible steel-rimmed rubber hoses, small ports, ship-to-ship transfers. The flexible come in small lengths and are connected to each other by nuts and bolts, making them into long pieces. But otherwise, of course, today nowadays most of the ports are also connected with the rigid loading arms, what we call the chicksons, which are remotely controlled and take in the role of the ship to a certain extent, but fore and aft movement of the ship has to be kept to minimum. Now this is how basically, this is your terminal, the ship comes, and this is the chickson, the loading arms, very easy to connect. So here only problem is, yes, this movement they can take, but the movement of the ship in fore and aft, so as a duty officer, you got to be careful, you got to have your team in control that ship's mooring lines, especially the springs, are always kept tight so that there is no movement in the fore and aft direction. Otherwise, these arms are very expensive. They can get damaged, there can be pollution. So this is how basically the initial preparation when the ship comes, berths alongside other ships. So of course, while you are alongside shore cranes, shore gantries, or your own cranes, they start loading, discharging. So this area is basically known as your manifolds, and these are your pipelines. The top lines, what we call, or various other pipelines are also there. IG, deck water, all the pipelines running on deck. Combined pipeline system of shore and ship deliver the oil to the cargo oil tanks directly via the drop lines, and these are the name suggest pipelines which drop to the bottom of the tanks vertically from the pipeline on deck, thus bypassing the pump room. So when you have to go into load, so we will see these pipelines also, how these pipelines drawing or the ये भी question आपके ऊपर है, what are the various pipeline system and how these pipelines, उनका sketch, and to understand and to see what are the various types of pipeline system available on different type of tankers. The shore system starts to pump, delivers either by gravity or at a low rate. So initially what you do first is like with duty officer, chief officer, you set up the line that whichever tanks you got to load, and you respectively what we call the line setting. So initial the line setting is done, then everything is all right, then you tell the shore people okay they can start. So normally they start at a very low rate initially, and you normally say take the oil in one tank, and meantime everybody checks there's no leakage on deck, everywhere, pump room. Of course you don't use pump room during the loading time. So all these line masters are kept shut, bulkhead masters, everything, all these walls which are leading to pump room, they are kept shut. So oil is taken onto the top lines, and via drop lines it is connected to the bottom lines which are running inside the tanks. And then you open the tank wall and respective tanks, the oil starts going. So initial procedure of course is little bit that you carry out the checks, everything is okay, no leaks, nothing, all working well, oil is coming into the tank which you have opened, and then finally you increase the rate and you open other tanks whichever you want to load. So this is a very simple system that, but you got to be, everyone has to be very active and on his toes that nothing goes wrong, because today the pollution rules are very strict, isn't it? So in case of any subsequent leakages that are detected, the ship walls should not be shut abruptly. ये भी नहीं है कोई leakage हुई तो suddenly आपने, we normally do not shut the walls. So we have to inform the terminal, then only the ship's walls are slowly shut. Of course इस चीज को, so that there is no pressure surge. वैसे तो things are there to prevent this also, to prevent this surge from affecting the pipelines. The cargo walls are set times at which they close. This means hydraulically remote operated walls you have. So even if you close them, they will take time. So they close slowly. So they will take about 6 to 8 seconds, 10 seconds, so that there is no pressure surge and it can be damaging for the pipelines. Now while loading the cargo, had we bypassed the pump room. Now however the cargo, अभी तो हमने ठीक है loading के time में you connect, check everything, all the checklist is complied, what all things are there, and pump room is just kept away, rather not used while loading. But discharging के time में, of course when I am going to discharge the oil, that time the pump room will be used because all the pumps are situated there. So within the pump room, at the pump room bulkheads are situated the isolation walls known as the bulkhead masters. So those walls are there which are basically connecting these pumps or pipelines to the various tanks. So these bulkhead masters, by opening the walls, the oil is led to the pump suction wall, and on opening the oil flows to these pumps which are basically main COPs, what we call cargo oil pumps. The oil flows to these centrifugal pumps. Turbines which are situated in the engine room commonly drive these pumps. The shaft penetrates the engine room bulkhead and drives the pump situated at the bottom of the pump room. So ये तो आप सबने देखा होगा कि yes, how these pumps are there situated in the pump room and they are basically shaft penetrates the bulkhead, and either it can be a steam turbine or can be electrical heavy duty motors, which are basically situated in the engine room. And of course you have CCR, what we call cargo control room. From there you control everything. So the pump accelerates the flow of oil onto a discharge pipeline, and this oil is just led to the deck pipeline and to the manifold where it flows through the flexible pipeline or the hard loading arm to the shore pipeline system. So similarly, discharging time the ship uses its own pumps. While loading, shore was using either by gravity or pumps. So while discharging, the ship uses pipelines and pumps to discharge the cargo to shore tanks. Pump room, again, it's a cofferdam kind of space. In fact, it is accepted as a cofferdam which begins on main deck and ends at the keel. So it goes right bottom, many steps, many platforms. So आपने उसके 2 चक्कर लगा लिए, तो no need to go to the gym. And it may have more than 2 decks. However, these decks are normally solid decks but are partial decks made of expanded metal. So you are able to see right through to the bottom, right from top. And there would be a companionway leading from the top to the next deck and so on right to the bottom. So these pump rooms, of course, as a duty officer अगर आप हो तो आपकी ये भी एक responsibility बनती है that everything goes well, nothing is going wrong. So pump room के round लगाने भी एक normal routine है that no leakage because the pumps are running, oil is going into it. So उसको भी देखना पड़ता. So at the lowermost deck are situated the cargo oil pumps, what we call COPs, and the number of pumps vary in number. For crude oil tankers, normally we have 4 pumps. You can use all 4 or maybe 3 at a time. And for product oil tankers, the number of pumps depend on the number of grade of oil the ship is capable of carrying. So आजकल तो of course यहाँ पे भी 4 है, so you have 4 sets of pumps and 4 sets of pipelines. So you can use any pump on any pipeline. The system is designed through walls, crossovers, that any pump and any set of pipeline can be used. And of course for the product tankers, the system of pipeline is slightly complicated because there you need a segregation, because the product carrier normally carry 2-3 grades, so those oils should not mix. Whereas crude oil carriers, all the tanks almost have maybe 1 or 2 grades, but even crude में slight mixing doesn't make much of a difference. But if you are carrying diesel and kerosene, isn't it? So diesel goes into the kerosene, तो cargo खराब हो जाएगा. So therefore, working on the product carriers or the system on the product carrier is the pipeline system is slightly different. So once the gravity flow to the COP is not possible, after you have discharged the main bulk of the oil, when the oil level in the tanks goes down, then of course it used to be the stripper pumps, but nowadays these stripper pumps are also replaced by what we call the eductors. So strippers were of course of reciprocating type and have great capacity to create partial vacuum to suck out the remaining oil from the tanks. So again on a product tanker, the number of stripper pumps would be equal to number of grades. वहाँ पे अलग-अलग है. So now we have, of course, largely on all the tankers, even your normal ships, instead of stripping ballast or stripping this oil, we use eductors. I think most of you must have used. Anybody who has not used eductors? सबने use किए होंगे, no? Other ships also? क्या कहते हैं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. किया.
Isn't it? So eductors आपने किए हैं. So अभी थोड़ा सा tankers पे जिन्होंने किए हैं, you got to be little more careful. और इस पे भी question आता है. So eductor है क्या, कैसे चलता है? We'll study that. What is basically and what all precautions. So basically आपके वहाँ पे है कि tomorrow you are going to use these pumps. So आपको थोड़ी knowledge होनी चाहिए कि हाँ ये जो pumps हैं, you will study that कि how these pumps basically work. Centrifugal pump क्या होता है, reciprocating pump क्या है, eductors क्या है, कैसे चलते हैं, क्या क्या उनकी precautions हैं, what is good, what is bad for them. So generally 2 eductors are provided on each crude oil tanker. However, one stripper pump is also always provided to strip the cargo lines. मेन कार्गो तो ठीक है आपने कर दिया, बट व्हाट अबाउट द ऑयल विच इज इन द लाइंस, तो उसको भी फाइनली निकालने के लिए और टू पंप इट अश्योर यू हैव अ स्ट्रिपर पंप विथ स्मॉल डाया लाइन with which you can strip or empty all the pipelines also. Pump room hazardous area. So if you know that yes, pump room is there, there can be oil, there can be anything. So all the fittings, ventilation, lights, all has to be gas tight. And tanker safety torches again some intrinsically safe. Everything has to be intrinsically safe, right from your walkie-talkies to torches to everything. Not like other ships that we can use any torch, so please don't carry any normal torches which are used on the tankers. They are all intrinsically safe torches, gas tight torches. Ventilation system, exhaust type and intake from all levels with the intakes being fitted with closing devices. So normally pump room ke liye you have this exhaust system which the trunking goes to all the levels and it takes the suction. It is on the exhaust side, it keeps running and circulation is there so that no built up of hydrocarbon inside the pump room. So hydrocarbon gases being heavier than air tend to settle at the bottom of the pump room. So the main exhaust always are from the bottom level. So you will find that so oil will be definitely collecting in the bilges. Normally we keep very good care that if there is any leakage we try to repair. Pump room bilges are always kept clean, dry, so that no oil, no gas formation. If there is a gas formation, you know, hydrocarbon mixed with air can create lot of things. Flammable mixture, dangerous, any spark, and then explosion can take place. So at the top of the pump room, harness lifting arrangement is provided to lift out. So ये भी एक as a duty officer आपके लिए एक चीज हो जाती है कि that you must take a round and on top of the pump room for emergency purposes you always keep a harness and provided to if somebody falls or something happens, so you should यानी कि उस वक्त हम ढूंढने को जाएं. Clear passage is left vertically from top to bottom of the pump room. So pump room की भी काफी precautions हैं. When you go, it is always the ventilation should be on, lights no need. So in case there is emergency, do not run into the pump room if it is kept closed. Ventilation is most important. Fireman's outfit placed at the top of the pump room and may have different type of fixed firefighting appliances such as total flooding, the CO2 or foam applicators. So everything is included, fitted here. Bilge alarms are fitted which give alarms when the bilges are filled, high level, low level alarm. So ये सारा का सारा of course अभी तक आप कर रहे थे under somebody's instruction, somebody's supervision. अब आपको independently you are working as a second officer, third officer on these tankers. So you got to be careful कि क्या क्या precaution लेनी है, क्या क्या होना चाहिए. So this is basically your cargo oil pump, COP जिसे कहते हैं, centrifugal pump. It takes the suction from this side, impeller turns, and this side it discharges the oil. So the oil from the tanks come into the suction side. This is your normally the shaft which basically comes from the engine room. So this shaft can be driven by any prime mover, can be turbine, it can be electric motor, can be anything. And this turbine or this shaft when it turns, so it creates a vacuum here and a high pressure on this side. So all the oil is pushed through this line which we call the discharge lines. Centrifugal pump situated in the pump room bottom platform consists of an impeller which rotates within the casing, and due to this rotation, which is generally about 1000 to 1700 rpm, the oil is speeded up, and this increase in velocity causes the oil to flow out at a greater pressure. So you can push the oil far away up to the shore tanks. And these pumps are capable of delivering a very high rate of discharge up to 4000 meter cube per hour. And within this type of pump, the level of oil has to be above the pump. So as such, the pump is situated at the bottom of the pump room. So your tanks are of course full up to main deck level. So there is high enough head for these pumps to pump out all the oil from your most of the tanks. Earlier, centrifugal pump situated in the pump room is driven by a shaft which is connected to the steam turbine, and shaft passes from the engine room to pump room through the pump room bulkhead via gas and oil tight gasket. So there is nothing, no gas, nothing can go into the engine room from the pump room side. And turbines are driven by superheated steam from the boiler. So वहाँ पे turbines हैं which are turning the shaft and driving the pumps. Second, you have the reciprocating or positive displacement pumps, such as reciprocating pumps work on the principle of a normal hand pump. आपने देखा होगा. The movement of the piston creates a vacuum which sucks the fluid. So it is normally known as the positive suction, positive discharge. So इनकी precautions अलग हैं. So however, size of pump is dependent on the size of the piston and the length of strokes for discharging. So ये दोनों तीनों pumps जो हैं, these are given for what we call all the cargo discharge, cargo handling equipment. So these pumps are used to discharge small quantities of oil such as strippings. The balanced and centrifugal pump cannot discharge due to the oil going below the level of the pump. So naturally आपका जो पंप का लेवल है सक्शन से ऑयल नीचे आ जाएगा तो सेंट्रीफ्यूगल पंप को लिफ्ट करना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल होता है. इट मे लीव. सो देन वी यूज द इडक्टर्स. Reductors, very simple, work on the principle of Bernoulli's principle. A driving fluid is pumped down the main line with a very high velocity, what we call the driving fluid or the drive. So first you start the reductor drive. It can be like on general ships, you have this ballast pump running sea to sea. Here you run the oil, say from tank, one tank, slop tank to slop tank, and then oil is diverted via the reductor. So when you oil is passed through reductor, so there is a vacuum created, and that time the line whichever you want to strip, you open that tank wall, so it will start stripping and collecting the oil into the same slop tank. So this is what it says. The driving fluid is pumped down the main line with very high velocity through a constriction past a relatively smaller opening, thus creating a vacuum. So when reductors are used for clean ballast, the driving fluid is seawater. When used for stripping crude oil, driving fluid is cargo itself, delivered by means of one of the main cargo pumps. So from one tank, but we normally run from slop to slop, and then all the oil is collected into the slops and finally pump out the slop. So reductors are simple, rugged, have no moving parts, do not become airlocked like other pumps, and they are widely used on tankers of all types. So this is basically how your reductor looks like. That it is, this is the driving fluid, and it has to run at a very high pressure, 8 to 12 kg per square centimeter, and it passes through this constriction, and therefore there is a vacuum created because suddenly the dia of the pipe is increased, and then you have the sort of a suction created, and this side is connected with your जो भी tank आपने strip करना. So no moving part, just start the pump, the driving fluid, and it will take suction. So यहाँ पे आपको थोड़ी सी precautions है कि yes. So do not open the tank wall first. So let the driving fluid develop little vacuum here, then only, otherwise the oil may go back into the tank. So of course it is simple when you start working. So this is how basically it looks. There is a small nozzle inside of a special metal which creates this high pressure, and then suddenly the pipeline dia is increased, and there is an increase in the dia of the pipeline, and vacuum gets created here. Reductors always to be operated at or near their design driving pressure, and in general low driving pressures will considerably reduce. अगर आपका driving fluid का pressure अगर 5-6 kg हुआ तो nothing will be pumped out. So it has to run at very 8 to 12, whatever design, normally say 8 to 10 kg. And higher back pressure in the system than the reductor design can also reduce. Higher back pressure means अगर आपका slop tank full है, so उस पर भी back pressure आएगा, उससे भी आपकी efficiency of the reductor reduce हो जाएगी. So reductor के लिए आपको जो टैंक में जहाँ कलेक्ट कर रहे हो उसका लेवल भी लो रखना है. So reductor drive liquid must always be flowing before the suction valve is open to prevent backflow of the driving liquid to the tank suction. And same thing when shutting down an reductor, the suction valve is to remain open until the reductor is stopped to prevent reductor drawing a vacuum on the suction line. So ये थोड़ी सी precautions आप use करोगे. So you know that how you have been using. Now this is basically the layout of a tanks. अब जिन्होंने नहीं किए तो उनके लिए भी इजी टू अंडरस्टैंड, प्लस एक पास्ट पेपर्स में कई बार क्वेश्चन भी आ जाता है, व्हाट इज द लेआउट ऑफ अ टैंक्स ऑन अ ऑयल टैंकर. सो ऑयल टैंकर इज सिंपल. ये आपका 4 पिक, यू हैव द green wala is the ballast tanks. It forms a double skin also, and you have all the SBTs, what we call the segregated ballast tanks, on the sides and forward, and in between you have these COTs, cargo oil tanks. So they are basically port, starboard, center, and 1 2 3 4 5 across. So this is normally called 1 across, 2 across, 3 across, 4 across, 5 across, and then at the end you have the pump room, and then engine room, and your accommodation. That's all is right aft. And if you see the cross-sectional view, then it looks like this, that these are the ballast tanks, and then in the center you have cargo oil tanks. So here sketch banana bhi mushkil nahi hai. So you can explain the layout, that these are the oil tanks, these are the segregated ballast, pump room is aft, and all these tanks are connected with the pipeline system. So this is how your side view looks like. These are your various tanks, and inside the tanks you have these pipelines on deck also, and you have the pipelines inside the tanks also. So oil passes through, or oil runs through these pipelines, right on top also, and even under the, even inside the tanks also. What are the various pipeline systems we have? Basically there are 3 systems of pipelines found on tankers. One is ring main, direct line, and of course nowadays what we have is submersible pumps or single line, single tank system, basically on product and chemical tankers. Of course, for most of the product tankers also what we call the Framo pumps. That's also very good system, but this Framo pump is only on product or chemical, not on the crude oil carriers. And another is a free flow system. So ये आपके पास 4 सिस्टम हैं. So इनके ऊपर क्वेश्चन आता है, what are the various pipelines, describe one of them, or he may ask you describe or make a sketch with any of this ring main system or direct. आपकी बुक्स में भी दिया है. So basically if you see now these sketches, these are the bottom lines, means these lines are running inside the tanks. So they are differently color coded. You have this plan in your CCR, how this pipeline is running. It's very simple to make. And similarly you have the drop lines. Now you may be getting confused कि drop lines क्या होती हैं. Now this is your on deck main manifold, where you connect both sides, port and starboard. You can connect either side the shore lines or your flexible 6 ends for loading, discharging. So the oil will come into, now these are your main deck lines. So these are the deck lines which are running on your deck, on the main deck, and these lines are from here, the lines are connected, what we call, these are called the drop lines. So they vertically get connected from this line directly onto the lines which are running inside the tanks. So these are called the bottom lines, they are running inside the tanks. So the oil comes from here, and there of course these are the walls here on the deck also, and similarly on the bottom lines what we call the line masters. These are called the bulkhead masters, these are called the line masters. Now if I close these walls, here also, what will happen? The oil will come from here if I am loading. So oil cannot go past this, and this is basically your pump room. Here your pumps are situated. So this is totally bypassed, so nothing goes into the pump room. And similarly, these bulkhead masters in the pump room, they will also stop the oil from these pipelines going into the pump. So this is totally isolated. So the oil is coming through the shore lines into this, and it drops whichever line you are want to use. So normally you use 2 lines or 3 lines, normally 2 are enough for loading, and then you can of course divert oil into any tank. So it goes like this. Similarly second, number 2 line dropping here to number 2 bottom line, number 3 drop to number 3 bottom line, and number 4 to number 4 bottom line. So this is a very nice sketch to understand how the pipelines basically look like on your oil tanker. And then you have again inside your tanks the ring main system, that various walls and various crossovers. So these are your crossovers, that is you can crossover one line into the another line. You open this, if you are using this, say these are 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can, if I am using this pump or this line, so if I open this, I can take suction from any of the tanks through this crossover, through this pump. Or if I am using this pump, then also I can use. So product carriers, we normally have these 2 wall segregation at least, कि एक wall लीक किया तो दूसरा wall होल्ड करना चाहिए, because oil should not mix. So sometimes you have these tanks 1 across, 2 across, 3 across. So हो सकता आपने इसमें different grade load किया, इसमें different grade load किया, so they should not mix. So the chances of mixing is only through the pipeline walls. If the wall is leaking, the oil from one tank can go to the other tank. So this is again, the design is such that it is taken well care. So it is generally of square or circular layout, used mostly on product tankers as segregation of cargo is required. And now the system is expensive, more piping, extra number of walls. However, it is a requirement because we have to keep, we cannot contaminate, we cannot spoil the cargo. So product tankers pay, of course, when you come to discharge, the first thing they take the sample, send it to the laboratory, and it takes 5-6 hours. So before they come back and they see everything is okay, there is no mixing, no contamination, then only they accept your product. ये तो है नहीं कि आपने केरोसिन में डीजल मिक्स कर दिया तो आप उसको खोजी नहीं है. Everything is good. First thing they collect the sample, send it to laboratory. So वहाँ पे भी there is lot of tension chief officer के लिए कि हाँ यार everything should be good, especially old ships. You never know. New ships, of course, everything is working perfectly fine. Old ships में कहीं ना कहीं गड़बड़ होने का चांस रहता है. And this is another system, what we call direct line system. This is mostly used on crude oil tankers. So here you have the one line, you have another set of line, and they are also interconnected. So they are also interconnected with the crossovers. Crossover means one line can be connected to the another set of tanks or another set of pipeline. So एक तो pipeline चल रही है serving this tank, this tank, this tank. So these are again your tank walls, what we call the tank suctions. So ये valve आपने खोला and oil will start coming from into this line and your pump can start discharging. जैसे हमने ये वाली शुरू में देखा था. Now discharging time में we open these bulkhead masters. So the oil from this pipeline will come into the pump. So pump will, of course, when you are starting the pump, it will take the oil and start discharging. So this is the suction. यहाँ पे pump है and जैसे आपने देखा COP, centrifugal pumps. So they will discharge into this line and then you open this line master also. So इस line को अगर if you are using this line, so आपने bulkhead master भी खोल दिया, line master भी खोल दिया, and then you start the pump and it is, oil is going here, and in discharging time में you keep these drop valves shut ताकि oil यहाँ से वापस नहीं आना चाहिए. And then the oil, open the manifold valve and it goes ashore. So sometime if you find any leakage, anything, normally at the manifold also we have the trip switches and you can immediately trip the pump so that there is not much of a spillage. और अगर आप इसको use कर रहे हो, now the oil pump is pumping the oil from this line, taking suction from this line of this set of tanks. So this line is connected against to various tanks, one center, one port, one starboard, जहाँ भी connected है, and then it is discharging here. So in case something happens, immediately you open the drop, the oil starts recirculating. So वो भी एक method है. Yes, suddenly I open the drop valve, so oil जो है discharge होने की बजाय यहाँ पे recirculate होगा and then stop the pump. So this is a very versatile system. Different things are there for emergency also what to do. So direct line system is again like this type. So ये question common है. Various pipelines. ये sketch की थोड़ी practice कीजिए, books में भी है, and not so difficult. ये आपने tanks दिखा दिए and these are your pipelines. Direct line system mainly found on crude oil carriers, where up to 3 gears of oil can be carried. Most of the direct pipeline system is fitted with 3 direct lines. System cheaper to construct And disadvantages over the ring main system is line washing is more difficult. System has fewer walls which make pipeline difficult to control. So crude oil washing में crude oil tankers पे of course हम इतनी टैंक वॉशिंग नहीं करते एज कम्पेयर टू द प्रोडक्ट, बिकॉज वहाँ तो एक प्रोडक्ट के बाद दूसरा है, यहाँ तो क्रूड ऑयल के बाद क्रूड ऑयल ही है. So what we do is for cleaning the tank is the crude oil washing, but on the product tankers, so आपको tanks को wash करना है. After kerosene you may be carrying ATF, you may be carrying naphtha, you may be carrying diesel, isn't it? So different products. So उसके लिए tank cleaning most important. क्यों? ये तो कार्गो खराब हो जाएगा. क्रूड ऑयल के लिए सेम कार्गो, नथिंग मच डिफिकल्ट. टैंक क्लीनिंग इतनी until unless there is a repair or inspection, फिर आप क्रूड ऑयल वॉशिंग करते हो और वाटर वॉश भी उसको दे देते हैं. So direct line system, as the system lacks versatility, there is problem with line and wall segregation. Not required. System provides vessel to carry many grades, and disadvantage is cost factor, having multiple pumps on board. Free flow system, of course, very less ships are there. So I worked on, we had this Zakir Hussain, Rajendra Prasad crude oil carriers. So there we had this free flow system. Basically on the bulkheads there are basically gate walls. So you open these gate walls, the oil starts flowing from one tank, say from one center to two center to three to four, and four center पे आप अपना pump suction को खोल दीजिए, and the pump starts taking suction from four center, and all the oil starts flowing from forward to aft tanks. So but nowadays very few ships are with this free flow system. System is usually found on large crude oil carriers where cargo piping is not used for discharge. Instead, gate walls are provided on the bulkheads of the tanks, which when opened allow the oil to flow freely in the aftermost tank into the COP. An advantage is system primary cost factor, allows for fast drainage, efficient means of pumping the cargo tanks, and disadvantage only one grade of oil can be carried. Free flow आजकल कम है because you need multiple grades even in crude also, so that's why you don't have this free flow system. Independent system where we have what we call these Fremo pumps or deep well pumps. The layout is not very common in the tanker trade. System is normal on chemical ships, but as most of the time most of your product carrier also, because this efficiency, stripping very easy, all the product can be stripped, nothing is kept on the ship. And some product tankers have this system, and single line serving an individual tank through the independent pump, that could be either submersible or deep well. So in pumps ki normally hydraulic motors fitted on deck, and the pump is again deep well inside the tank, and it pumps the oil. It's a very good system, but इसका जो आपका what we call the power pack, the hydraulic system, वो काफ़ी बड़ा होता है, because all the motors are running with this hydraulic pumps, or the big high torque motors are there which run all these pumps. So सब pumps की सब system की अपनी अपनी advantages हैं, अपनी अपनी disadvantages हैं. So this is the pump inside the tank, looks like this. So the impeller is here. So basically all the oil flows and it keeps on sucking in. Same from the bottom of the tank, it starts discharging to the shore pipelines. So this is what we call the deep well pumps. So ये तो थे आपके various pumps, pipelines, and closed space entry. Of course when we are working, तो सबसे पहली चीज़ as a duty officer तो हमारी safety. Now, enclosed space is one with restricted access that is not subject to continuous ventilation, in which atmosphere may be hazardous, toxic. So आपका pump room जो है, it basically is your enclosed space, cargo tanks, ballast tanks, fuel tanks, anything where the restricted ventilation is there. So this is known as enclosed space. So many of the accidents have taken place in enclosed spaces of oil tankers, have resulted from entering space without proper supervision or adherence. So almost every case fatality would have been avoided if simple guidance in this chapter had been followed. So इसके लिए आपका main thing is, and it's a very normal human reaction to go to the aid of a colleague in difficulty, but without realizing or just becoming impulsive and ill-prepared rescue attempts that you'll end up into problem yourself also. So respiratory hazards from number of sources could be present. So ये सब pump room के लिए applicable होता है. It could include one or more respiratory contaminants associated with these vapors and hydrocarbon vapors during carriage and after discharge. The presence of hydrocarbon vapor should always be suspected, even in your tanks. So very common. आपने tanks में भी जाना है, pump में भी जाना है. So other ships, cargo holds you go like bulk carrier and all we have seen. वहाँ पे hydrocarbon gases are not there, so you can go do the cleaning, washing. But on tankers, if you have to go inside the tanks, so सबसे पहले उसका atmosphere check करना बहुत important. If anybody tells you also कि आप कभी इस टैंक में जाओ या देख के आओ या कुछ भी करो, most important thing, of course, आज तो आपके टाइम में, now you have to organize the things. You may have to tell the people. Chief officer may tell you कि अभी ये करना है. तो आपके पास होना चाहिए. नहीं, टैंक्स है, पंप रूम है, सबके लिए आपकी इंस्पेक्शन बहुत जरूरी है. इनिशियली यस, तो पंप रूम में तो कंटिन्यूस वेंटिलेशन भी है. एक बार आपने चेक कर लिया तो चलता है. पीपल कीप गोइंग अप एंड डाउन. बट कार्गो टैंक्स जो हैं, दे आर वेरी वेरी डेंजरस ऑन द ऑयल टैंकर्स. सो दैट्स व्हाई दिस एनक्लोज स्पेस एंट्री फॉर हाइड्रोकार्बन वेपर्स और योर ऑयल में भी हैविंग टॉक्सिक वेपर्स, सबको चेक करना बहुत जरूरी है. And cargo may have leaked into the compartments including pump room, coffer tanks, permanent ballast tanks. सारी की सारी, please be very aware that it is not only the tanks. So oil can leak into any of the or the vapors, not the oil, even the vapors can go into any other spaces. So cargo residues may remain on the internal surfaces of tanks even after cleaning and ventilation. ये नहीं कि crude oil wash कर दिया या water wash कर दिया, चाहे क्रूड ऑयल है चाहे प्रोडक्ट टैंकर है, कि चलो जब तो साफ है वी कैन गो. नो. Sludge scale in a tank which has been declared gas free may give off further hydrocarbon vapor. ये आपने किया है, क्रूड ऑयल में कॉमन है. You cannot get rid of the sludge totally. कहीं ना कहीं कॉर्नर्स में, पॉकेट्स में स्लज थोड़ी बहुत रहती है and it keeps on generating the gas. बट हम उसको अगर हमने जाना है, so we check the level. हाइड्रोकार्बन लेवल कितना है, we keep the ventilation on just to keep the accumulation of these gases there so that you can go and inspect. So residues may remain in cargo or ballast pipelines and pumps. ये सारी चीज़ आपके मन में आनी चाहिए. So presence of gas should also be suspected in empty tanks or compartments and tanks, or if there is a common ventilation system which could allow free passage of vapors from one tank to another. तो ये भी possible है कि आपने एक टैंक को वॉश कर दिया, उसको आइसोलेट नहीं किया, सो दूसरे टैंक से वेपर जो हैं आपके टैंक में आ सकते हैं. ऑक्सीजन डेफिशिएंसी, यू ऑल नो, lack of oxygen should always be suspected in all enclosed spaces, particularly if they have contained water, have been subjected to damp or humid conditions. So ऑक्सीजन डेफिशिएंसी तो है. Atmosphere tests. Any decision to enter enclosed space should only be taken after atmosphere within the space has been tested from outside the space, अंदर जाके नहीं. And all atmosphere testing equipment, वो भी हमने अच्छा पढ़ लिया है कि yes, इसके अंदर भी आएगा. On the tankers, what all equipment we have for testing, कौन सा equipment we use करते हैं गैस टेस्टिंग के लिए. गैस मीटर्स कौन से होते हैं? Anybody?
Hydrocarbon meter and oxygen analyzer.
Okay.
बाकी इसके अलावा टैंक स्कोप,
मल्टी गैस detector.
Yeah, multi-gas detector है nowadays. So you have combined gas detector. Otherwise, we will study that. Not today. The various instruments, which is most important thing. Why? Because now, as a duty officer, it becomes my responsibility कि यार अगर मैं चेक कर रहा हूँ अंदर की गैस लेवल चेक कर रहा हूँ, तो पहले तो है कि जिस मीटर से चेक कर रहा हूँ वो ठीक भी है, सूटेबल भी है कि नहीं. Isn't it? Like you have one is what we call explosimeter that works in an atmosphere where there is oxygen is there. Now most of the oil tankers, our tanks, we do not have oxygen. There's only, they are in inerted condition. And explosimeters do not work in the inert atmosphere. So उसके लिए tank scope है. उसका प्रिंसिपल ऑफ वर्किंग थोड़ा सा अलग है। तो ये चीज़ भी है कि मैं अगर चेक कर रहा हूँ तो सूटेबल इक्विपमेंट जो है, मीटर जो है सूटेबल भी है कि नहीं इसके लिए। ऑक्सीजन एनालाइजर, तो इसीलिए आपके लेवल पे इन इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स पे काफ़ी स्ट्रेस दिया जाता है दैट यू नो व्हाट इज़ द बेसिक थ्योरी, व्हाट इज़ द बेसिक प्रिंसिपल ऑफ दीज इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, हाउ दे वर्क, इनकी कैलिब्रेशन। तो आपने जीवोसर्स के साथ काम किया होगा। टुडे आई थिंक मोस्ट ऑफ द शिप ऑक्सीजन एनालाइजर, एक्सप्लोसीमीटर और HC कंटेंट मीटर, मोस्ट ऑफ द शिप्स आर हैविंग। और टैंकर्स पे तो है कि वी यूज देम फ्रीक्वेंटली एंड उसका रिकॉर्ड भी हम रखते हैं। सो जीवोसर के साथ आपने अगर काम किया है तो यू आर वेल वर्स्ड। फोटो एनालाइजर क्या होता है, HC कंटेंट मीटर क्या है, एक्सप्लोसीमीटर क्या है, ड्रैगर ट्यूब्स वगैरह सारा कुछ है। तो उसका मंथली चेक भी करते थे हम, इज़न्ट इट, उसकी कैलिब्रेशन की हाँ यार ये ठीक दिखा रहा है कि नहीं दिखा रहा है। ये तो नहीं है कि अंदर गैस है और ये ज़ीरो दिखा रहा हो। ठीक है। सो बच्चे, आई एम वेरी मच दिस थिंग बिकॉज till you gain some experience, till you grow up in life at sea, so आपके लेवल पे चांसेस ऑफ मेकिंग मिस्टेक, बिकॉज इनिशिएटिव भी बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छा मैं कर लूँगा, ब्रेव भी आप बहुत ज़्यादा होते, इज़न्ट इट, विदाउट रियलाइजिंग कि चलो जी मैं चला जाऊँगा, मैं टैंक में हो जाता हूँ, कुछ नहीं होता, नथिंग डूइंग, नथिंग ऑफ दिस सॉर्ट। आपने अपनी सेफ्टी प्लस द अदर पीपल, बिकॉज ऑल पीपल आर वॉचिंग यू, दे आर ऑल डिपेंडेंट अपॉन यू, all the crew, when you are the in charge, when you are the officer of the watch, so you have to make sure that आप किसी को कहाँ पे भेज रहे हो, that area, that atmosphere, everything is safe. तो ये छोटी छोटी प्रिकॉशन जो हैं आपने बाईपास नहीं करनी। कोई बोलता है अच्छा ठीक है कोई बात नहीं, वेंटिलेशन हाँ यार ठीक है 10 मिनट के बाद, आधे घंटे के बाद जाएंगे, ये नहीं है कि चलो 5 मिनट का काम हो जाते हैं। यू नेवर नो, द मोमेंट यू एंटर यू गेट गैस्ड अप, फिनिश्ड। पर कैरियर्स में भी है, कोल कैरियर में भी है। स्टिल टुडे इतना कहने के बाद, इतना पढ़ने के बाद, इतनी प्रिकॉशंस डिस्कस करने के बाद, स्टिल व्हेन यू गो बैक ऑन द शिप एक्सीडेंट्स टेक प्लेस। होते क्या, छोटी मिस्टेक कभी बड़ी नहीं होगी, यू ऑलवेज फाइंड स्मॉल मिस्टेक से यू लैंड अप इनटू प्रॉब्लम। एंड अगेन उनके लिए ऑफ कोर्स दिस आई विल take it in detail when we study the instruments. Record should be kept for all maintenance work, calibration tests, and testing should only be carried out by personnel who have been trained in the use of the equipment. So I think you are using it, ये नहीं कि blindly आप यूज़ कीजिए, आपको उसकी थ्योरी भी पता होनी चाहिए, यार कैसे काम करता है, कौन से एटमॉस्फेयर में करना है, क्या क्या इसकी रिक्वायरमेंट है। सिंपल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, बाकी हमें उसकी इतनी टेक्निकल उसमें तो नहीं जाना। एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन भी आता है, उसलिए भी पढ़ना है, यूज़ करना है उसलिए भी पढ़ना है। And care should be taken to obtain representative cross section of the compartment by sampling at several depths. So especially tanks पे नहीं कि एक ही जगह चेक किया। So normally you must have seen, उनके लिए तो ठीक है जिन्होंने किया, sometimes you may not have worked for the tankers, you worked on other ships and अब आप second officer बन के टैंकर पे चले जाते, कोई बात नहीं, doesn't take long time to learn. So tank compartment है, टैंक कंस्ट्रक्शन आपने देखी है, there are various levels, various अंदर काफ़ी उसमें ऑब्स्ट्रक्शंस भी हैं, लॉट ऑफ स्ट्रक्चरल मेंबर्स आर देयर। तो हम उसकी जो डेप्थ, उसकी जो टेस्टिंग है वो अलग अलग लेवल पे लेते हैं। एंड व्हेन टेस्ट्स आर कैरिड आउट फ्रॉम डेक लेवल, वेंटिलेशन शुड बी स्टॉप, मिनिमम पीरियड ऑफ 10 मिनट्स। ये भी नहीं वेंटिलेशन होना फिर तो आपको सब कुछ ठीक मिलेगा। Even when tests have shown a tank compartment to be safe for entry, pockets of the gas should always be suspected, because आपको पता है टैंक कंस्ट्रक्शन ये सिंपल, हमारा रूम तो है नहीं कि छोटा सा रूम है हाँ जी उसमें से सब कुछ निकल जाएगा। देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पॉकेट्स, लॉट ऑफ बीम्स, कॉर्नर्स, जहाँ पे आपकी स्लज और दीज थिंग्स विल बी देयर, तो वहाँ पे गैस फॉर्मेशन होती रहेगी। सो व्हेन डिसेंडिंग टू द लोअर पार्ट ऑफ द टैंक, फर्दर एटमॉस्फेयर टेस्ट शुड बी मेड, रीजनरेशन ऑफ हाइड्रोकार्बन गैस शुड ऑलवेज बी कंसिडर्ड पॉसिबल। तो टैंक्स के अंदर जाना इनिशियली, चाहे आप सी वॉशर के साथ जा रहे हो, किसी के साथ जा रहे हो, आपने अपना ब्रेन भी यूज़ करना है कि यार क्या हो सकता है, नहीं कि ब्लाइंडली कीप ऑन फॉलोइंग, अच्छा भी चलो कुछ नहीं होता, नो। आइडिया ऑफ ये सब पढ़ने का है दैट यू शुड ऑल्सो यूज़ योर ओन सेंस, योर ओन इंटेलिजेंस। यूज ऑफ पर्सनल डिटेक्टर्स कैपेबल ऑफ कंटिन्यूसली मॉनिटरिंग ऑक्सीजन कंटेंट ऑफ द एटमॉस्फेयर, प्रेजेंस ऑफ हाइड्रोकार्बन वेपर should be strongly recommended. वेंटिलेशन, जब तक बंदे अंदर आपने भेजे वेंटिलेशन शुड बी कंटिन्यूसली ऑन। बाई चांस कुछ होता है उनको बाहर बुला लीजिए, नो हार्म, काम रुकता है, कोई बात नहीं। And sufficient sample should be drawn to ensure resulting readings are giving you correct reading. Hydrogen sulfide, another big danger with these crude oil tankers, crude oil carriers. A lot of crudes have got very high sulfur content. You have this H2S gas. It will contain hydrogen sulfides. So if the tank is thoroughly washed, the H2S should be eliminated. But otherwise, this gas is fatal. Atmosphere should be checked for hydrogen sulfide prior to entry and prohibited in the event any H2S being detected. So ये नहीं है उसकी, वैसे तो उसकी स्मेल वेरी टिपिकल, आपने केमिस्ट्री लैब में अगर काम किया तो वहाँ पे भी H2S की प्लांट रहता है। So hydrogen sulfide is rotten eggs की स्मेल है, no way going. So इन चीज़ों के लिए भी आपकी what we have the permissible exposure limits कि हाँ, and threshold limit values again often expressed as the time weighted कि अगर उसमें इतनी गैस है, इतने ppm है, this much is allowed. So if the gas is 100 ppm, 50 ppm का जो level है, you can work for 1 hour, 2 hours. So there is a time limit. I told you tanks में no tank is absolutely clean जब तक उसको physically ना किया जाए. So there will be some gas. So इसके लिए नहीं कि किसी बंदों को अंदर डाल दिया dry dock. I don't know if any of you have done the dry docking. So when people go for dry docking, they keep on monitoring this. Lot of cutting, welding has to be done. So उसकी cleaning, ventilation, and ये सारी की सारी उसमें कितने देर तक बंदों को रखना है. So आप शिप पे काम कर रहे हो, if there is something, so as a chief officer level पे जब आप इसको डिटेल में पढ़ोगे कि what are the permissible exposure limits for particular gas, and TEL is usually expressed as time weighted average, normally averaged over an 8-hour period, and short term exposure limit expressed as maximum airborne concentration average over 15-minute period. So ये values is expressed as ppm by volume of the gas in air. So a TLV of 300 ppm corresponding to about 2% LEL is established for gasoline vapors. So ये सारी चीजें आपको basically थोड़ा सा entry procedures ESCOT में है, कंपनी की checklists हैं. So I won't discuss those checklists. So you will have these thoroughly checked up. यहाँ भी मैन एंट्री क्या करनी है, क्या क्या करनी, कैसे क्या क्या हो सकता है. So these are very rough or broad procedures which I have gone through here. Entry permit should be rendered invalid, ventilation stops. No one should enter cargo tank double bottom unless entry permit is. So आजकल तो यही चीज़ बहुत चीज़, risk assessment, permit system. So these are all the things. The responsible officer means you are the responsible officer. You have to ensure appropriate atmosphere checks have been carried out. Oxygen is 21%, hydrocarbon level less than 1% LEL, no toxic. So only ये दो ही चीजें नहीं, आजकल toxic, lot of crudes, lot of products have got toxic vapors. Ineffective ventilation. चलो ये तो आपका सारा lines of communication. Of course you know this, regular checks for the entry procedure. So ये थोड़ी सी precautions थी. So basically this is a very broad this thing. What is oil tanker, what all the tanks layout, pipelines, and how oil is loaded, discharged, like as compared to other ships. So यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा operation जो है everything is done by the ship staff. So वहाँ पे तो other ships, shores, stevedores, other people we were discussing, they are coming, they are loading, discharging. यहाँ पे everything is done by the ship's equipment and the ship's crew, ship's officers, isn't it? So यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी आपको care रखनी है. So next we will see what are the hazards of this petroleum and instruments and IG system and what is crude oil washing. So ये 3-4 चीज़ें हैं आपकी टैंकर थ्योरी में. इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स भी हैं, उसके साथ साथ आपका IG सिस्टम क्या है, IG प्लांट क्या होता है, हाउ द IG works and what all precautions with IG, and again crude oil washing, उसकी precautions when we are doing crude oil washing. Crude oil washing है क्या, उसके procedures क्या है. Okay. So कल हमारी क्लास है एक, I think I have one class with you tomorrow. So we will take the simple hazards and instruments, उसको कल कर लेंगे, and then next week I think 1 or 2 sessions will finish with IG and COW and we will continue. Or you want to do, चलो पहले इसको ख़त्म कर लें, फिर बाकी रिवीजन का बाद में देखेंगे. चलो, any questions so far what we have done? क्या कहते हो? Any questions on the today's topics? कहाँ पे हो भैया? Are you there? You guys or not?
Yes, sir.
तो ये भी ध्यान रखना, ठीक है. इसके साथ साथ थ्योरी जो भी आपके पास नोट्स हैं प्लीज़ पढ़ते जाइए. एक क्वेश्चन इसमें 100%, 1 क्वेश्चन विल बी देयर ऑन द टैंकर थ्योरी पे, एंड ईजी रहता है, कोई भी नहीं है. लेआउट हो गया, पाइपलाइंस हो गई, थोड़ा स्केच बना लीजिए, स्केच बनाने की प्रैक्टिस, एंड एडवांटेजेस डिसएडवांटेजेस ऑफ वेरियस पाइपलाइन सिस्टम. ओके, चलो, नो क्वेश्चन एंड कॉल इट अ डे.
सर नेक्स्ट क्लास में थोड़ा फ्लेमेबिलिटी टैंकर का जो क्वेश्चन है इसका बता देंगे.
ओके, टुमारो या
हाँ
कल
सर,
है
थोड़ा सा
क्लास?
उसका क्लियर.
हाँ, बताइए बोलिए.
सर उसका टैंकर का क्वेश्चन है, फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम. इसका सर एक बार आप समझा देते क्लास में तो सही रहता.
हाँ, कौन सा क्वेश्चन आपके पास है? कुछ एनी पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन?
सर फ्लेमेबिलिटी रेंज डायग्राम.
हाँ, वो आएगा बच्चे, आएगा. आई विल कम टू दैट ओनली. कल हम जब हैजर्ड्स करेंगे ना, तो उसके साथ फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम पूरा एक्सप्लेन करूँगा. आई विल मेक यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज़ फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम. ओके, और हैजर्ड्स भी क्या है, फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम है, कैसे बनाना है, वो कैसे, उसको समझना कैसे है. सो वी विल स्पेंड टाइम ऑन दैट टुमारो. सो नथिंग टू वरी.
ठीक है सर.
आईजी सिस्टम जब हम करेंगे, इसके बाद ये तो एक बेसिक था कि यस दीज आर द वेरी बेसिक थिंग्स, कि टैंकर है क्या चीज़, उसके ऑपरेशन कैसे होते हैं. एंड उसके बाद आईजी सिस्टम पे भी क्वेश्चन आता है, आईजी प्लांट क्या होता है, उसका ब्लॉक डायग्राम एंड वेरियस पार्ट्स अंदर कैसा कैसा. ठीक है, आपने थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ा होगा, हम थोड़ा यहाँ थोड़ा डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे. एंड क्रूड ऑयल वॉशिंग, इन तीनों चीज़ों पे क्वेश्चन आते हैं. फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम तो कॉमन है, बिकॉज फ्लेमेबिलिटी तो अच्छे हम सबको पता ही होना चाहिए. इट इज़ नॉट ओनली फॉर टैंकर, इट इज़ फॉर एवरी शिप. अदर शिप्स ऑल्सो वी हैव ऑयल टैंक्स, इजंट इट? बंकर टैंक्स हमारे पास होते ही हैं. तो वहाँ पे भी आपने एक बार समझ लिया फ्लेमेबिलिटी डायग्राम, देन यू अंडरस्टैंड कि हाँ यार, एटमॉस्फेयर क्या चीज़ होती है, व्हाट इज टैंक एटमॉस्फेयर. उसको करेंगे टुमारो, विल सी. कल करेंगे, हैजर्ड्स में आएगा. ठीक है, व्हाट आर द वेरियस हैजर्ड्स एंड वेरियस अदर ऑपरेशंस, और क्या क्या चीज़ होती है. डोंट वरी, ओनली लेट मी नो इफ यू डोंट अंडरस्टैंड एनीथिंग. थोड़ा आपकी तरफ से कुछ रिस्पांस मिलेगा, देन ओनली आई नो कि हाँ यार, कहाँ पे यस हो रही, कहाँ पे नो हो रही. चलो, ओके, या
थैंक यू सर.
वेलकम. बाय बाय.
Thank you, sir.
वेलकम, अच्छे, वेलकम.